You're listening to Design Between the Lines, the only design and home furnishings podcast where we talk with the movers and shakers, industry innovators, and lifetime legends of the home furnishings industry. It's here that I get a chance to sit and chat with the influencers shaping the industry into what it is today. This episode of Design Between the Lines is brought to you by Furnishings Design Incorporated. For over 15 years, FDI has been providing commercially successful product designs, marketing research, and strategy to manufacturers and marketers of fine furnishings products. FDI's approach to design and product development is based on optimism, collaboration, creativity, innovation, and a focus on end consumers' lifestyles and the client's brand image. Find out more at www.furnishingsdesigner.com. Our guest today is no stranger to the world of home furnishings. Alex Shuford is president and CEO of Century Furniture, one of the world's largest privately owned manufacturers of upper-end residential furniture. He carries a rich family history, which has thrived through an ever-shifting business landscape, and one which persists in demonstrating exceptionalism within the industry. Century currently operates 8 factories, which employ over 1,500 in the United States. The mark imparted by the Shuford family has never been as prominent as it is today, especially right here in North Carolina. Alex, it's a pleasure to have you here, and welcome to Design Between the Lines.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm going to start where a lot of things start, family. Growing up in a family already established in a renowned in the furniture industry, what was that like?
Well, I'd spent the first 20 years trying to run away from it, I think, as I think a lot of third-generation family members and family businesses do, and then kind of came to my senses sort of ironically on a mountaintop in Nepal and said, what am I running from? This is an awful great opportunity. Maybe I need to go immerse myself in it. And then I spent the next 20 years trying to undo all the resistance I had in the first 20 years. But, you know, it's always difficult to sort of hold yourself up to the standards of the generations before. And I think there's a lot of pressure, maybe self-inflicted, to make sure you don't let people down. And you know, my sisters and I, you know, what we wake up every day doing is trying to just stand on top of those shoulders that were in the generation before us and not mess it up. And
I understand
I'd say
that.
about 2 days out of 7, we don't mess it up. So we're working on getting that third day. And before the end of my career, I want to be at least 50% of my days where I move the ball forward, not backwards.
Oh, I totally understand that. Was embracing your family business in the home furnishings industry in general, was that I guess it wasn't a natural fit based on the story we've heard so far. Does it seem to grow on you now? Is it?
Oh yeah, no, I love it, and I think I probably even loved it when I was trying to avoid it. You know, I think that's the secret draw of a family business is that it's sort of the air around you as a kid. You know, and you kind of at some point get to this realization that you can't not sort of immerse yourself in what you're breathing and living. And I think the same thing for the rest of my family. We all love the company deeply, even if we tried to avoid a relationship with it at certain periods of our life.
Oh, I totally understand. Well, as you were growing into it, wearing the garment of the family business you wear now, were there inspirations along the way? People who were inspirational or mentors to you?
Dozens. It would take the rest of the interview to list them all. But my father in particular, who was always an example of sort of honor and trust, and he was also a big proponent of, if you want to achieve things, you have to be okay making sure the credit is given to others or to the proper people, that saying you can move mountains if you don't care who gets the credit. And he was a big one about being understated and making the team successful. Then, you know, my uncle, my grandfather, certainly, you know, but there are a lot of individuals just that I've worked around or with who took the time to teach me parts of the business, retailers who did that. executives, but line associates who took the time to slow down and explain to me what flow matching was when I was wet behind the ears, and what it meant to properly match a veneer and how difficult that was, and all those aspects of it, retailers especially, and I can't speak more highly about some of our experienced retailers who have been in this business for multiple generations, who take the time to walk young manufacturing associates through their floor and point out the things that work and don't work and why. That semi-permeable barrier between retailers and designers and manufacturers, the more information that flows through that, both directions, helps the industry. And there are a lot of those out there that have helped lead me to, at least partial success.
Well said. The Wall Street Journal refers to your time in Northern California as a brief rebellion. I quote that. Can you tell us about your time there and what you were able to take away from it?
I have a soft spot in my heart for California. I think if it was a little bit more affordable and the taxes weren't so high, we'd all secretly, want to live there. Beautiful place. And if for no other reason, it taught me to think outside of the box a little bit more than I would have otherwise. The family had a rule that you after college, you had to work somewhere else for a couple of years before you could come back to the family business. And I took that to the extreme, and out in Northern California, sort of got into my own business out there and went through a crash course in small business management, success and failure. And there's a sort of a rote saying in business that, you learn a lot more from your failures than you do from your successes.
Oh, yeah.
And that's even more the case when you're writing the checks out of your own checking account.
Yeah, I bet it is.
becomes a very pointed lesson. But I had gone to college down in Southern California and then transitioned up to Northern California and gotten into business up there and hired people and had to lay people off when business was not successful, and tried to grow and then tried to shrink. And then, probably more important than anything else, I was in retail, so I got to learn at the point of contact with the consumer just how difficult it is to do business at retail and all the nuances that go along with it. And I think gained a healthy respect for that side of our industry. And that's really, flavored a lot of my decisions and a lot of the ways I go about handling my business on the manufacturing side is never letting go of that intimacy with how difficult it is to keep the consumer happy.
Yeah, I'm thinking about your experiences in Northern California as well, and realizing what it takes to operate any business, let alone a small one. And if the dollars are coming out of your pocket every day, that made it meaningful.
I think I was in 5 different sales tax authorities in California. So I just remember at the end of every month trying to calculate what I owed the state of California. And it took a higher level of math than an English major could muster at the time.
Very good. Very good. Where'd you go to school in Southern California?
I went to a place called Pomona College in Southern California, part of the Claremont schools. And it was
near
fabulous.
Redlands.
Yeah,
I
nice.
Grew up in Southern California. Yeah. Southern Cal. Went to Southern Cal now. Don't hold that against me. But Pomona used to play Whittier College, and I lived in Whittier. Yeah. So, and who names the college football team the Poets?
We were the Mighty Sage Hens, I think, actually. So, and our claim to fame as a mascot was, when threatened, a sage hen will fake that it's injured and limp away from its nest. So I always thought, what a mascot to get behind.
This is good. This is good. And then both teams played a school whose emblem was the green wave. That's right. Pepperdine. And I'm going, okay, I'm not sure where we're going with this for football, but
Green Wave versus the Poets, and the winner takes home the limping sage hens. So
Yeah, oh God. Well, only in California.
Only
that's
in
what
California,
we can say.
For sure.
Oh my gosh. Well, today, wearing the garment of the family business that you are, what's a day in your life like these days?
It's another one of those sort of business school books that you'll read about change management. Most of my days are fast shifting from, dozens of small, I would say, we would call them opportunities. You might refer to them as small brush fires, and seeking out a couple of blocks of time to deal with larger strategic issues. So I spend a lot of time on the phone, a lot of time talking with people, and a lot of time within the data of the business, looking for areas right now that indicate places where better systems or better processes could make our factories flow better, could make our lead time shorter, or could make our dates more accurate. And that's a little bit of a tale about where the industry is right now, given the supply chain challenges and the COVID issues we've dealt with the last 18 months. But, in normal times, I would spend more or probably a disproportion of my time and energy working with our marketing and merchandising staffs and trying to make sure they're communicating with each other cleanly and honestly, and with our operations team cleanly and honestly. I'm a big, big proponent of transparency and information, that if smart people and capable people are informed and being honest and communicative with each other, generally speaking, good outcomes will come from that. But we tend to put up walls. We tend to jump into silos. We tend to, get our feelings hurt and then be passive aggressive. And, so I think all business leaders, probably should have gone back to school and gotten degrees in psychology, and we probably should all be seeing shrinks.
Well, we're in the furniture industry. That explains it right there.
Right. More time on the sofa, right? More time on the divan. And get some therapy.
Oh, well, I'm going to say, what do you do to stay ahead of the curve on right now? The curve is literally coming back on itself. We talked earlier off the show just before we began about the changing situation over in Asia and countries shutting down and not being able to do anything. Speaking of supply chain already, but now nothing being made in certain countries. It's how are you dealing with that? Obviously you're trying to stay ahead of the curve informationally.
Right. Well, I'd say, early in the pandemic, we were on our heels, so a year and a half ago, we were purely reactive. It was almost no way to get out in front of it. As we got our wits about us mid-pandemic, we were planning better. This most recent situation has pushed us back on our heels again and put us into guesstimation mode. So if you're like me and you like information, the more opinions, the more data, the more feedback you can get, the better decision making you have. Right now, the data we need and want from our partners is being slowed down. The flow of it to us is being slowed down by the reality that they're dealing with very dramatic health issues within their population. So their first priority isn't to tell us what the new purchase order date is on our shipment of hardware from the Philippines, because they've got hundreds of people in hospital, at home, quarantined, and family members that are, in dire straits. So we're having to necessarily, and also because compassionately we want to be, understanding of their inability to get us information. But not to quote a politician who used this phrase before, there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and there are unknown unknowns. Right now, the known unknowns are that we know in Asia the dates are getting worse and that there's disruption in the supply chain. The unknown part of that known is we don't know what it's going to do to our dates. Is that 2 weeks? Is it 4 weeks? Are they going to have rolling shutdowns? So it's our job to make a good guess at what it'll do to our ability to produce so that we can, as early as possible, update our clients about how that'll impact their orders. And I think the other thing that's challenging, especially here in America right now, is we feel this Delta variant spike differently than the rest of the world. We're still walking around on the streets and we see people maskless. We see restaurants full. We see airplanes full. And we're not understanding that, say, in Vietnam, the vaccination rate's less than 10%. Yeah. And hundreds of factories are dark, completely shut down, skeleton staffs. They're where we were last April and May. And it's hard to conceptualize. And the newspaper and the media isn't putting that on the front page, and understandably, because right now the front page is Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So when it becomes front page news a couple of weeks from now, that battle's already over in Asia, and that bubble in the fuel line, that 2, 3, 4 week period where nothing happened, that'll then hit us. It'll get to the engine in about 8 weeks, and then all of a sudden we're going to sputter. And it's hard to predict that for people because we don't know exactly how big the bubble in the fuel line is. So, the job is to sit down with each other, look each other in the eye, and say, do you think it's 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, and then try to estimate and communicate as quickly and as well as possible. And I keep telling people we're 100% likely to get it wrong, but you can't use that as the excuse not to do something. So.
Yeah, I mean, to agree with you, and I get it, I guess, because I get calls regularly from designers and other people, and then people that aren't in our industry going, well, how did we get here? And I said, well, we got here because for 3 to 4 months, the entire world stopped making everything. They stopped cutting trees. They stopped doing everything. They didn't go out of the house. I said, now what you're going to do after closing all that off, you're going to start it back up, which startup time takes some time. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like the old days when you start a factory after the 4th of July holiday. You're repairing machinery. Some things start up, you flip the button, and you broke a cog in there, and you got to reap. So it's once you give them that information, they realize, oh yeah, it did take a while to start the pipeline back up.
And when you start back up, and even when you're running full, the pipe didn't get bigger. So once you're at 100% capacity, this isn't Spinal Tap. We don't get to turn it to 11 just because we desire it. And I think people, I've gotten a lot of calls recently. They say, well, is foam still a problem? I said, well, here's the deal. We're back to 100% capacity on the foam supply chain. They said, well, that's great. I said, we need 130. But by the way, the foam supply chain can't just create 130% capacity. That takes years. It takes adding more production capacity, which is infrastructure, which is capital expenditure, and that doesn't happen overnight. And they go, So far this year, and it's an interesting problem, we have not outshipped our incoming order rate a single week this year yet. So that means every week our lead times have gotten just a little bit longer, and we are doing, the whole industry is doing everything it can. I tell customers, because I get a number of consumer calls, nobody wants you to have your sofa more than me. Trust me, because I don't get paid until you get it. We all are aligned in our desire to have you have your sofa. And I just physically can't make it happen faster than what we're already doing.
Alex, I'm going to move the discussion over towards the design world, if you would, designing home furnishings and so forth. And in your opinion, how does design influence the day-to-day quality of people's lives today? I mean, obviously, we've just been through the COVID shutdown, so everybody got tired of what they were sitting in, looking at, whatever.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think design and home have always been important, but for a period of time, home became this way station, right? That you came back from work, you dropped off your bag, you changed clothes, you went out for your evening or afternoon activities, you came back from that, you dropped off your stuff, you went out to dinner, and then you slept there, and then you got up, and it was sort of like a transit station, and so design in the home sort of followed how that acted, and the pandemic really recentered that home experience as a place where we actually spend chunks of time. And, and some of that's because entertainment venues, unfortunately had to shut down. We weren't going out to dinner. We weren't, it's sort of that, broadly shifting location where you can spend your time. Mm-hmm. And now in the home, this idea of comfort and livability, and your point's well made when you slow down and look around and you say, "Gosh, I've had that piece forever." And A, I never liked it, maybe, or B, it's tired, or C, I just need spiritually to refresh my surroundings so that they're more uplifting, they're more indicative of who I am today versus 10 years ago. We, as humans, we are constantly growing and changing, but our surroundings don't always change at the same pace.
Yeah.
And so it's like, kind of the clothes you wear. Most of us are not still wearing the things we were wearing 10 years ago, but we might still have the furniture we had 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I think for people in the industry that are providing that service, that art of design, we sort of are watching trends, but the other piece of it is we're also, again, I'll go back to that point about we're psychologists in a way. We're truly trying to understand the individual and then understand what kind of environment will enhance their life, will make, maybe it's because they need to come home and have a respite and a retreat. Maybe it's because they come home and they need that home to be more organized than their chaotic life outside of home.
Yeah.
But I always believe that the best designers start their process with a client in a session where they're talking about who the client is and understanding what's going on in the client's life. And so you're creating this wardrobe, if you will, this sort of decor armor that's helping protect them or enhance them.
Yeah.
And the pandemic has, if it's done nothing else for our industry, it has made the home now the center of people's lives again. And I think people will hold on to that for years to come. I don't think that shifts out easily. Because I think we secretly wanted it.
Yeah.
And now that we see it and we've experienced it, we appreciate it.
So clearly, investing in the experience of home is an idea whose time has come.
Yeah, feng shui had its time as a term, but the essence of that term is still real, which is how placement, how object, how space, enhances the sort of, to use a mystical term, the energy or the flow of your experience in the home. Yep, exactly. Your chi, but a lot of that is sight lines and what are you trying to achieve? And home furnishings are just a piece to that toolkit that a designer has. I think the other thing that's happened in the last year and a half is those exterior areas of the home, which were becoming part of the home decor, sort of toolkit, the spaces that you had to consider. If home interiors were 4 times more important in the pandemic than they were before, the exterior of the home was 10 times more important because you weren't going on vacation and you needed to get out in nature and experience some of that. And all of a sudden you looked at your backyard or your patio or your poolside and you went, my goodness, I can do better than this. And maybe I need a consultant or a designer to help me. Somebody in the past, it's funny, my wife and I use a designer. I'm in the industry, surrounded by it. I've been a merchant in the industry for 20 plus years. You'd think I could do it on my own, but I tell people all the time, I don't do my own dentistry. I don't do my own lawyering. I choose somebody that does it every day and is a professional. And they say, well, why? And I say, because the mistakes are expensive.
Yeah.
And I need somebody that is less likely to make the mistake and that also can keep my wife and I from being at each other's throats over this experience.
Exactly. So what equates to excellence in design to you? In your world, what does excellence in design look like?
Yeah, at the object level, it's so individual, which is why for our companies we have these incredibly broad product lines because for some people it's opulence and it's intricacy and it's that unbelievable detailed craft that might be in a Maitland Smith piece where you can't believe the brass work and all that went into that brass work and the marquetry and and all the carving detail. And for other people it's simplicity. It's taking away everything not necessary and getting a piece down to its just pure essence. And I'm really design agnostic. I appreciate all of those. And then for me, it's about the residence itself and then what that customer, that client is trying to achieve in their life with that residence. So let's say they're a multi-home client.
Yeah.
In their mountain house, they may be trying to achieve something very different than they are in the home that they have in downtown Charlotte. Because when they're occupying those two spaces, they're trying to get something different from those days, from those afternoons, and so the space should be delivering to them part of the experience they're hoping to get when they're in that particular location, when they're in the mountains and they're trying to unwind. Well, what does a mountain house do to help them unwind? Not to help a general person unwind, but specifically them. Because somebody in the mountains that needs a contemporary, clean, very sort of simple aesthetic up there, that's what delivers the unwind for them. But for somebody else, it's birch bark exposed posts, and it's wormy chestnut and something that's more rustic, because that delivers for them the experience and gets them into the mind space they need to be in. And I think a good designer teases that out.
Well, you mentioned one of your divisions, just for the sake of our audience who doesn't know the Rock House Farm collection. Could you let us know what those divisions are?
No, absolutely. Many people know the Century brand, and Century's is sort of a broad spectrum, high-end custom house. Hickory chair, likewise, large, broad spectrum, a little bit maybe more delicate in scale and proportion, very focused on the sort of interior design side of the industry. We also have Hancock & Moore, which is a leather specialty company. I would argue the finest leather made in certainly the country, if not the world. And then there's Highland House, which is sort of a bright, happy, clean, transitional, but also based in traditional elements, high-end design company. Jessica Charles focuses on chairs of all types, bedroom, living room, bar stools, dining chairs. Maitland Smith, which is a great company that's got its core in traditional opulence, but also explores contemporary, and sort of the fine craft and materials that are available around the world. Cabot Wren, which is a commercial contract seating company. Who am I leaving out? Pearson, a fine upholstery focused company, and that's sort of the core platform of brands.
That's a good collection.
It's
an excellent collection. Yes,
and each with its own personality. We work really hard to make sure that they are constantly pushing against each other.
Well, and I'm going to say that's probably a part of your job that's probably involves psychology.
Yeah, that's right.
Almost every day, I'm sure.
We want no homogenization. The beauty of a brand is that it's distinct and it has its own personality, and that personality needs to be. It's just like siblings in a family. Siblings are their own worst enemies. They're constantly fighting. There's huge competition among siblings until somebody from outside the family walks in the room, and then they all get shoulder to shoulder and fight with the outsider.
The wagons are then circled.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, tell me tell me about any current projects you can talk about. I mean, what's next for Alex? I know one of the things that just recently happened. I read about that.
I've pivoted a lot of my sort of day job hours over to our Hickory chair brand. I'm super excited about that. It's a 110-year-old furniture company that is just unbelievable in its craft and what it can accomplish from a product standpoint. And we acquired the brand a couple of years ago, and the family, has looked at me and said, when are you going to go really get your, ankles, knees, and hips deep in that, in that pool, learn it, really understand it. And so that opportunity came up recently. So that, when I talk about day jobs, we're funny as a company. Every executive has to also have a day job. No one gets to sit in the back room and dream up big ideas. So you also have to go muck the stalls.
Yeah,
you also have to go feed the horses. And so that's a big part of my day job right now. The other, I think, things I'm excited about are really sort of how we all as an industry are going to, if you will, exit the pandemic. What the opportunities are on the other side of this really difficult period we've all been dealing with, and some of that we chatted about, the sort of priority of home, the design industry sort of growing into this really important and critical sort of professional industry.
Yeah.
And I think, the appreciation for consumers of what design can bring to their lives is different now than it was even just 2 years ago. And then we're all grappling with the sort of shifting distribution world. What does the internet mean? What does the vertically integrated lifestyle brand store networks mean to the industry?
Yeah.
And, there's this overabundance of choice and easy access to information. The consumer now, I was laughing with my wife the other night, and we were talking about when we were growing up, there was no cell phone, there was no Google. When we went on a family vacation, it wasn't this break where, now, gosh, for a week we're out of cell service. Isn't that great? We were always out of cell service, but now you relish this. I'm out of this information pipeline.
Yeah.
And that's something we're all having to deal with, which is sort of the work-life balance. And I think the pandemic has shifted that. This work from home movement is not going to go away. The re-suburbanization of America is very real. People that have decided to move outside of the cities because both their employer is making it flexible enough where they can do that, and now they want space, they want yard, they want home with square footage, and that opportunity for all of us to sort of reevaluate what it means to live in a space is exciting.
Well, that brings me to a section of the interview I'd like to. We've got a lot of young people that listen to the broadcast, and we talked about advice to others. I talked about this when we were off mic a little while ago. What makes a good leader, in your opinion? That's one of my questions I'd like to have you address.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Empathy, organization skills, and then a desire to always get down to the truth. It's tempting to skip along the surface because slowing down and going deep and getting into the quagmire is, especially for A-type personalities, for people that want to move and move and move and move, can be excruciatingly painful because details are hard to unwind. But the truth typically is down deep. It's after 4 or 5 whys and whats. You can't just say, "How's it going?" Fine. No, you got to keep asking until you really get down to root cause.
Sort of sounds like a teenager's dinner question and answer.
Exactly. And organizations are that way. Organizations have inertia and want to keep moving on the path that they're on, and you have to constantly be questioning whether that's the right path. But I would say one of the things I always ask a young hire is, what is your system of being organized? What is the physical system you use, the tool set you use to stay organized? Sometimes I get blank stares. Sometimes I get very detailed answers about here's what I do. But my follow-up to that is, as you move in your career, you will get to the point where more is happening around you, to you, and with you than you can hold in your mind. And that if you aren't taking those out and putting them into an organization system to be able to follow up on them, to be able to keep them for future reference, then you're going to drop so many plates that you're not going to be able to be trusted to spin more plates, that you will reach your physical limit of what you can take care of, and that'll become your ceiling. So if you will build mechanisms to help expand your ability to manage stuff, chaos, projects, whatever, information, that'll help you. And I've gone through half dozen different systems because, like a home, your system is unique to you. What will work for your personality and your style, my system won't work for you. But if you can be organized and work to always get at the truth, and then communicate. Now, people laugh at me. They say, "You're an English major? How can you run a business?" An English major is a major in communications. And 80% of my day is communicating, both pulling information out and trying to get information imparted to people. So I would hone those skills if you want to move into positions, whether it's merchandising, design, or in just general business leadership. Hone those skills throughout your life.
Wow, that's great advice. That basically answers probably the next two questions I was going to ask. That's great. Thank you for that. Quick question on your current day job. When you are going into the day job this week is Hickory Chair. You're going to go in there. Do you walk down the line, Alex? Do you and talk to the line people in various departments? Is that how you operate in that? What's your organizational method?
Yeah. So I try to be on the factory floor multiple times a week, if not every day. I fail at that often because if once you sit down in front of that computer screen, the computer is insistent. It just is a nag, and it is throwing emails at you and popping calendar reminders. And so you got to force yourself to make the space. But I'm a firm believer in that the truth is usually at the operator level. Why something's not working, you can ask the plant manager, you can ask the VP. They have ideas and opinions, but the best ones also know that walk out and talk to the upholsterer, or walk out and talk to the guy running, the router, or walk out and because why something is not running smoothly, is not flowing smoothly, is known at the operator level. And some of that is, they want to tell you, but you got to be present. And sometimes being present is just being comfortable sitting with them for a while, standing with them for a while, observing. There's some great tenets in lean manufacturing, and one of them is the Gemba walk, which is a simple idea, and put it in English because a lot of people, kind of squirrel their face up when you use the Japanese term. It's simply go where it happens, and watch, and you can't, I guess, overestimate the critical data that is available to your eyes if you'll go and just be a set of fresh eyes. And so for me, that's part of my daily routine. And the plant managers get annoyed with me because I'll typically go in the back door because I don't want to walk around a factory with a plant manager a lot of times.
I just entourage
want to walk through by myself. And they have little codes. They'll call each other on their walkie-talkies and say, quote unquote, the blackbird has arrived, or the old man is walking. But the further I can get through the factory without the code being set off, the more information I get cleanly and purely. So.
Well, we've come to the part of the end of our time together, and honestly, I have to say how much I've enjoyed this conversation with you today. And I thank you for taking time out of, I know, a very, very, very busy schedule to be with us today.
No, it's been fun.
Thank you, and hope to see you in October.
We'll see you in just a few short months. So it's been a real pleasure. Thanks.
Design Between the Lines is produced by Element Studio with the International Society of Furniture Designers. We record in High Point, North Carolina. To find videos of these podcasts, be sure to subscribe to the International Society of Furniture Designers YouTube channel. To learn more about ISFD, visit isfd.org. And don't forget to subscribe to hear more industry stories of Design Between the Lines.